All right, folks, it is now 6:10. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a small tradition here on County Council that we've tried to keep going throughout the years. Ms. Lowell asked us to keep the tradition, to say a few words. Doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be philosophical. So we keep that tradition going. And Ms. Showerman, if you would be so kind.
Yes, I felt very blessed today with the sun shining, so I chose something that reflects that. It says, keep your face always towards the sunshine, and shadows will fall behind you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Inon, roll call, please.
Mr. Bale?
Here.
Mr. Horton?
Yeah.
Mrs. Rennie?
Here.
Mrs. Showerman?
Here.
Mr. Scatella?
Here.
Mr. Winarski?
Here.
Chairman Shank?
Here. This stage of the meeting, we have the hearing of the public. We did have somebody that did sign up. They did call ahead of time and did apologize for not wanting to come in tonight because of the weather. I do have an email from her for time constraints. It's here for public example if you want to see it or read it. It's kind of lengthy, so we're just going to add it to the record. Anybody else that would like to speak at this time? You did not sign up. Just a friendly reminder, you have 3 minutes. Just state your name and your municipality, and I will start the timer then.
My name's Freda Tepfer, and I live in Erie, and I'm glad to see my old friends on the council, the new people. I think there's a bunch of us who think, you know, we'd like to come more often and see you more often and see how things are going. This day after Martin Luther King's the anniversary of his birth, and I remember being home and hearing about the assassination. I remember hearing the speech about I've been to the mountain, and I've been listening to the debates about voting rights. I hope that the diversity and the democracy that we have come to cherish in our community, our state, and our country long endure, and that you know, a particular piece on the last city county council meeting, and maybe I don't understand, but why quite a bit of money was taken away from the diversity commission, and maybe that can be explained at some point. And since I was here for several earlier meetings and I stayed for the caucus, which I always think is the most interesting part, I heard that you're going to reappoint a member of the convention authority who's already been on for 20 years. And as somebody who has applied to be on commissions and who watches the activities of the convention authority and is aware of the role they have in this community, I would encourage you to not necessarily keep people on a commission for 20 years and then just reappoint them. I'm not saying you shouldn't reappoint this person, but it's something to think about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else would like to be heard? Anybody else that would like to be heard? Going once, going twice. Anybody else would like to be heard? If not, thank you. I'm checking things off my list. Get it right. See, when you sit right across from the solicitor and the accountant, you got to be careful. So then we have the minutes from the previous meeting on December 14th at our regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we combine all of these into one vote.
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Quick vote on that, Ms. Inon.
On the minutes of the previous meetings, Mr. Bale?
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. That brings us to the report.
We have to vote now. We voted to amend it.
Yes, we had an amendment, so now we just need a roll call vote to make sure that it's all good. Ms. Inon.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. Thank you for that correction. Now we have the reports of any county official, county executive or his or her designee.
None today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Then that takes us to B, Finance Committee. Ms. Showerman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met on Thursday, January 13th, and we submit to you to the agenda new business A through H, U, and V. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you. That takes us to C. That is the personnel with Mr. Scatella.
The Personnel Committee met on Thursday, January 13th, and submit to the agenda new business I through T and W through Y. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That takes us to D, old business. We had none. See, our staff puts little notes here for us since we're all so new up here. We want to thank you for those notes. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
letter D is other, so if any other council persons have report.
Thank you. Any other councilman like to make a report?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I do have something to say, just very briefly. There was quite a bit of controversy with the items, most of which are at a first reading this evening. I don't think you'll be hearing any additional comments on them since we won't be taking a vote, but I wanted to reiterate that all of the questions have not been answered and we have not reached a conclusion when it comes to those particular items on the agenda. And I look for more discussion to happen on those, just not this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other chairperson would like to make a report at this time? Seeing none? I guess we're going to jump into this.
New business.
Yeah, new business.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move to amend the agenda to move items E, G, I, and J to a second reading.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. So moved. Ms. Inon?
On the amendment to the agenda, Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes?
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. Gotcha. Just some new housekeeping things. Okay, we're going to move on to A. Now remember, these are first readings. Now, just for a friendly reminder, a first reading is exactly what that is. We're presenting these facts to you as they're written to us, and we don't get into like voting at this point. We're just a first read. So, Ms. Inon.
A first reading of ordinance number 1, 2022, amending the budget total on the face sheet of ordinance 109, 2021, the 2022 general fund budget.
Thank you. Takes us to B.
Ordinance number 2, 2022, repealing ordinance 125, 2021, the 2022 American Rescue Plan Fund budget revised expenditure of $250,000 for Women as Minority and Business Center.
just some clarification on what we're doing at this one. There were some funds being verified questions. So this is a first read, and then we're going to look at it and try to fix it internally. See?
The first reading of ordinance number 3, 2022. First, 2022 general fund budget supplemental appropriation of $14,400 for creation of tuition reimbursement line item within the court's budget.
Thank you. D.
First reading of ordinance number 4, 2022. First, 2022 library fund budget supplemental appropriation of $24,950 to receive grant funds that were awarded in 2021.
Now, I have a note here as a strike vote. Did we want to discuss that and take care of that now?
I think we should, yes. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to strike this from the agenda for tonight.
I have a motion.
I will second. Chairman?
Thank you. Do we need a roll call vote on that? Mr. Talarico? Thank you.
On the motion to strike, Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. Thank you. E, when you're ready.
Thank you. First reading of ordinance number 5, 2022. 2022 library fund budget revised revenue and expenditure of $1,000 for PA Humanities Council grant for Blasco Library Teen Reading Lounge.
And just a reminder, we did make a motion for a second on this one, so we're going to need a roll call vote on that. E?
Well, it's not a roll call. Move. Motion to.
A second.
So moved.
I'm sorry.
If there, it's a second reading of the ordinance, so I'm going to, it would be move, so moved.
So moved. Yes,
So
now we need a second.
Right.
No. Second.
Any discussion? Anybody have a comment? I look left. I look right. No comments? Roll call vote when you're ready.
To move to a second, Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
and Mr. Shank.
Yes. Just a point of clarification, didn't we already have a second on that? That was actually for the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're going to get through this.
As long as everyone understands that.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. We already made a second, we made a motion to second this already. So this is actually a roll call vote to put it in play.
Great.
Again, we have a lot of new folks playing today, so we're going to get this all through here. Gotcha. Which takes us to number F.
First reading of ordinance number 6, 2022. Second, 2022 library fund budget supplemental appropriation of $22,192 for completion of cafe project started in 2021.
Thank you. And just a friendly reminder, G was also part of the second that we already motioned, so this is the second read of this ordinance.
Killing me.
Just trying to help you.
Okay. Okay. On ordinance 6, Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Miss,
Sorry. It's on F,
They had it marked that they changed it to the second, yeah.
right. Well, what we need is, we need a second reading of ordinance number 7.
Yeah, because G was on the list for a
Oh,
second.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's fine.
Got ahead. Sorry.
G
I'm
is-
behind. Okay. Second reading of ordinance number 7, 2022. Second 2022 budget fund supplemental appropriation of $15,540 and creation of new line item for bulletproof vests in the Sheriff's Department.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a first, second. Any comments before we took for the vote?
Was a first from Mrs. Showerman.
First from Ms. Showerman, thank you.
Second from myself. Thank you.
First. Thank you for that point. I forgot that detail.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Shank.
Yes. That takes us to number H, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Okay. First reading of ordinance number 8, 2022, approving Harbor Creek Township Alert Ordinance 2010-201-6 as amended.
Okay, again, that's a first read, so that takes us down to I. Oh, thank you for that correction. This is a second read on this.
Second reading of ordinance number 9, 2022, first 2022 Public Health Fund Budget Supplemental Appropriation of $21,486 and creation of new position in the Public Health Department.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Ms. Showerman and second by Ms. Rennie. Whenever you're ready for the vote.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
and Chairman Shank.
Yes. I'm watching your pen to see when you catch up. So that takes us to J, and just a friendly reminder, this is a second read also.
Okay, I guess I'm supposed to be passing this along.
Don't worry about passing them, we'll take them later ready.
Okay. Sorry.
You're fine.
All right, number 10. Second reading of ordinance number 10, 2022, third 2022 general fund budget supplemental appropriation of $21,482 and creation of new position in the Public Health Department.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Councilman Horton, second by Ms. Scatella. Anybody have any comments? I'm just going to make a quick one here, just for clarification. We decided to move this to a second because this is kind of a time-sensitive issue. They need to get this position allocated, put in place, hire somebody so they can get this health department training schedule met, because they only offer these courses so many times a year. So we don't like to do things on second. We like to keep them on first. That way people can read and understand what we're doing. But this is a time-sensitive issue, and the folks in the health department asked for our help. That's why we moved it to a second. Ms. Inon.
On ordinance 10, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. Okay, when you're ready.
First reading of ordinance number 11, 2022, 2022 appointed official salary ordinance for first assistant county solicitor.
L, when you're ready.
First reading of ordinance number 12, 2022, 2022 appointed official salary ordinance for 2 assistant county solicitors.
M.
First reading of ordinance number 13, 2022, appointed official salary ordinance, Director of Administration.
N.
First reading of ordinance number 14, 2022, 2022 appointed official salary ordinance, Public Defender.
O.
First reading of ordinance number 15, 2022, amending the Human Resource Code, 2022, fourth general fund budget supplemental appropriation of $10,840 for change in hours, increase in wages, and starting salary of Director of Veterans Affairs.
P.
First reading of ordinance number 16, 2022, amending the Human Resource Code, the second 2022 Public Fund Health Budget Supplemental Appropriation of $21,211 for temporary promotion of acting Deputy Director to acting Director of the County Health Department, change in hours and increase in wages.
Q.
First reading of ordinance number 17, 2022, fifth 2022 General Fund Budget Supplemental Appropriation of $21,211 for the temporary promotion of acting Deputy Director to acting Director of the County Health Department, change in hours and increase in wages.
R.
Apologize.
Take your time.
Second reading of ordinance number 18, 2022, amending the Human Resource Code, third 2022 Public Health Fund Budget Supplemental Appropriation of $5,587 for temporary promotion of Health Promotion and Quality Improvement Director to acting Deputy Director of the County Health Department, change in hours and increase in wages.
Yes, those were first reads. I think we're pretty much done with the second reads, if I'm not mistaken. S, please.
First reading of ordinance number 19, 2022, sixth 2022 General Fund Budget Supplemental Appropriation of $5,587 for temporary promotion of Health Promotion and Quality Improvement Director to acting Deputy Director of the County Health Department, change in hours and increase in wages.
T is also a first read.
First reading of ordinance number 20, 2022, appointed official salary ordinance, interim county clerk.
U is also a first read.
First reading of ordinance number 21, 2022, seventh 2022 General Fund Budget Supplemental Appropriation of $22,192 for completion of cafe project started in 2021.
All right, now we're going to change gears here on V. This is a resolution.
Resolution number 1, 2022, approving the 2022 Accounting Services Agreement of Maloney, Reed, Scarpiti and Company, LLP for County Council.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, you guys came in at a time. We might have to do rock, scissors, paper. We'll give it to the lady. Okay, we have a first and a second. Anybody have a comment, questions, or concerns? He's quiet. You guys good? Ms. Inon?
On the resolution, Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
and Chairman Shank.
Yes. Now, this section is our appointments. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, perhaps Mary could move to amend W, the first appointment, so that it would read possible waiver of the administrative code, section 5A, 1010,
Section 5A,
10,
10. Yes.
and reappointment, and then go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend W to read possible waiver of the administrative code, section 5A10, for the reappointment, possible reappointment of Michael McCormick to the Erie County Convention Center Authority, etc.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. We have a first and a second. Any discussion, comments at this point? None seen. Ms. Inon?
On the possible waiver of administrative code, section 5A10, in the possible reappointment of Michael McCormick to the Erie County Convention Center Authority representing District 7, term to expire December 31st, 2025. Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that was a motion to amend, so now we're going to need a motion to, now we just need to vote it up or down.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say that Mr. McCormick has been training and working very closely with Mr. Richards, who has been chair of the Convention Center Authority, and to take his place. Mr. Richards is going to retire from this position, and they have been working with Mr. McCormick to fill his place. And they requested to please leave his expertise there, and so that he could take Mr. Richards' place. Thank you.
Mr. Horton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important that we do maintain a certain level of expertise and experience on that. And I think that we also may have an impending retirement in Mr. Wells. I know that he intended to retire last year before COVID hit. In my discussions with him, he delayed it. But one would have to think that we'll lose all those years of expertise shortly as well. So I think it's meet and right that we make this, that we take this action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Questions? Ms. Enon?
On the appointment as amended, Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. X.
Possible appointment of Lawrence A. Sapienza to the Erie County Convention Center Authority representing District 5, term to expire December 31, 2025.
Questions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any questions? Comments? Since Lawrence is my appointment, I'll say a few words. He's a member of the community. He's been a member of a local law enforcement entity for over the last 20 years. Found himself in a position where he has retired at an early age. He wanted to do something for his community. Reached out to me, and understanding retiring early from a law enforcement background, it was easy to understand his where he wanted to go. So we talked about different appointments, places he could do to serve his community. And this one came up. I presented it to him. He did some research on it. He said, Councilman Shank, I'd love to take that. So he's my appointment, and I hope you will support that.
On the appointment of Mr. Sapienza, Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
and Chairman Shank.
Yes. Why, when you're ready.
Possible reappointment of James Cardman to the Erie County Planning Commission, representing District 7. Term to expire December 31st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any comments? Thank you. Throw something at me next time. My back's to you. I apologize.
That's quite all right. I was just going to say that Mr. Cardman has been doing an excellent job there. This will be his last term, and they are looking forward to working with him again, and he is very anxious to get started again on his second term. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? I'm going to make sure I catch everybody this time. Okay. It's on you.
For the reappointment of Mr. Cardman, Mr. Bale,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mrs. Rennie,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes.
Chairman Shank.
Yes. Well, I have a little thing here I have to read here. The next Finance Personnel Committee meeting are Thursday, January 27th, 2022 at 4 p.m. in room 114 Alpha, Erie County Courthouse, or via Zoom. Next regular meeting of the County Council is Tuesday, February 1, 2022 at 6 p.m. in room 117 County Courthouse. Anybody have anything else before we leave?
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just go on record. I know this is your first meeting as chairman. Just want to acknowledge that you did a really wonderful job, not only here on the dais, out in front of the public, but back in the kitchen where we do our caucus. Really appreciate the professionalism.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate that. And like I tell everybody that I know, there is no I in team. But remember, there's one in Brian. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.